This is the 100x podcast, and maybe we should call ourselves the 9000 podcast today because we are going way bigger than 100. We are sitting down with the man himself, Avery from Avalanche, to talk everything 9000. It just went mainnet this week. I think you guys have entered an entire new world, and I'm really excited to explore it, man. Thank you for sitting down with us. Can you, just to kick things off, can you tell us what the heck AVAX 9000 is? Is it just really cool marketing language? Is it something tangible and new that is actually changing things? What is 9000?
Amazing question. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and it's good to be back. Good to be back. So, Avalanche9000. Yes, it is cool marketing. I'm, give myself a pat in the back for that one.
Are you the guy that named it that?
We could go into it, but yeah, it's a funny story behind it. But what is Avalanche9000? So I'm going to, since we have time, this is a podcast, I'm going to step back maybe around roughly a year ago, maybe a couple, 8 or 9 months. There was this community proposal that was submitted, Avalanche Community Proposal 77, ACP 77 was submitted to, I guess, our engineering department that pretty much outlined a way to reinvent subnets. And subnets at the time were our solution for anybody to create their own L1 blockchain secured by the Avalanche network, that they could use all their rules. Shrapnel's a famous one that got launched. Gunzilla's a famous one. Beam's one, but they recently transitioned with the upgrade. And what ACP 77 did is it introduced a path forward that would take us from around, I guess, 40-ish live subnets at the time to thousands and thousands of now Avalanche L1s, right? So rebranding from subnets, which was subnetwork is the technical term of why that came, to just L1 blockchains secured by Avalanche. And the way it did that is it made it a lot cheaper to create a validator for your own network. Previously, it was 2,000 AVAX staked up front per validator for your network, right? And if you just do some math there, if you have 5 validators, that's, roughly...
it's $50 for an AVAX basically right now.
$50 for an AVAX, so it's like $500,000. It's a lot of money, right? But now we have introduced a new model where there's now no 2,000 upfront AVAX cost, and you just have to pay 1.33 AVAX a month that is sent to our main network and then burned to register that validator. So it reduced the cost by 99.9%. That's not an exaggeration. That's like literally how much we reduced it by. And, we have some of the smartest engineers on the planet. And so they really crunched the numbers, right? And made sure that the numbers were right and that the model was right and that this would actually cause an explosion and could really not only increase the block space in all of crypto in general, but also increase the decentralization, right? Because with most like quick chain launchers, quick block space launchers, you make the trade-off where you're largely centralized at the start, and then it's going to take years and years to be fully decentralized. But we found a way that you can kind of like have it your way and kind of win all across the board at the start.
Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100x. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Let me tell you about our friends at games.gg. And when I say friends, I really do mean that they are friends of 100x. Their CEO, Omar, was one of my first introductions to Web3 gaming, and we're OG holders of their Gamers Lobby collection. We love these guys. They're essentially the super app of Web3 gaming. One of the cool things they've cooked up is a gaming quest system. You complete free quests for cool games, anything from retweeting a post to beating a mission in a new game, and then you get rewards, tokens, skins, whitelist access, all kinds of things. Go explore everything awesome they've crafted just for you at games.gg right now.
And so then we were thinking, okay, this ACP 77 with a bunch of other technical upgrades are going to be wrapped into something called the Etna upgrade.
Yep.
Right? that's not as sexy marketing wise, right? Like praising, shouting from the rooftop, Etna upgrade, Etna upgrade, Etna upgrade wasn't the coolest thing that we could have possibly done. We wanted a full blown merge moment, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the Ethereum merge is by far the most successful blockchain upgrade marketing campaign. In the space, it's not even close. And if you look at all the other L1s, whenever they do upgrades, frankly, you're just going to see a graveyard of failed campaigns, right? I'm not like hating on them. It's like a really hard thing. There's a lot of 2.0s out there. There's a lot of like funny branding or whatever, but they kind of all failed except for the Ethereum merge, which really captured all the mind share. So we came up with a list. We just said, okay, what do we call this? Do we call it the catalyst? Do we call it the L1 upgrade? Do we call it? And we just went through a bunch of different options. And I remember one time when I was on a bike ride and just like out of nowhere, I was just thinking a bunch of different ideas and just the term like Avalanche like 1,000, Avalanche something 1,000, right? Because at the time, like we test out ideas on tweets. We'll just like if we have an idea, see if it works, we'll just tweet what it is and just see how people like it. Avalanche 2.0 was the one that got the most likes. But if you do your history or if you look at other chains, 2.0 themed upgrades typically failed. So we're like, we're not going to do that because it just like typically failed. And then I just started thinking of like what's a different number? And then 9,000 just popped in my head, and it sounded like the dumbest idea of all time, like when it first popped in my head. And then in the next brainstorming session we had with all the marketing leaders, I'll never forget this moment. We were just going down the list and I said, I came up with a really bad idea yesterday. They were like, okay, what is it? And I was like, Avalanche9000. And it's because of the meme, the Dragon Ball meme. It's over 9,000. So there's all these connotations to it, and it's memeable. And if you GIF 9,000, you'll have a bunch of different options. So there's many, many layers to why it's a good idea, but it's just like so unconventional. And
you're making something as supreme as possible, but it's fun. It's not professional. It's not what you would expect from a corporate brand.
Right. And at the time, we're an extremely corporate brand. And so they're like, well, that sounds cool, but they didn't really get the meme. And so we went into Chat GPT and asked, like, what is the significance of the number 9,000? And it pretty much just made the argument for us of like why it's such a good thing. And so then we continued testing it, playing around with it, doing that. We ended up presenting to everybody, and it was just like an instant, like, oh shoot, like there's something to that. And this is our big moment, right? So we only had one shot at this upgrade because we knew the tech, if done properly, could literally change the entire blockchain space. Instead of apps just deploying on architecture that had a set amount of rules, that they were limited by what the virtual machine and the liquidity on that chain, like all these different things were limiting. You had to use X token as gas or whatever. If you could just spin up an L1 with your own customizations, if you're gaming, you could just make it as fast as you want, right? If you're a big fan of the Move language, you could use the Move virtual machine. It's just like infinite customization, and now easy. You could do all this in customization, which usually takes years and gazillions of dollars to fund. You could just do it in a couple clicks. So huge on the tech side, marketing side, 9,000. Let's see what happens. So funny enough, how we introduced it to the community was I had this idea. I say I, but it's really we. I'm going to say we. So we had this idea to create this Mission Impossible brief. And so essentially create an exploding video online that we'd only show people once. Yep. And I got in like a fancy spy uniform, mock athletic turtleneck. I went into the darkest room I could find, similar to one like this, and had a red light. And I essentially did this graphic where it was like a helicopter flying over the White House, landing, an elevator going into the underworld, and then me popping out into screen, just kind of making it sing. And I'm like, gentlemen, here is your mission if you choose to accept it. And I basically just outlined the plan of how big of a deal this upgrade was, and that I needed the community to be involved on the ground level, because that's essentially like how you make these things successful. You can only project from a big account so much, but people will never get truly excited unless they feel like they own it, unless they feel like they can have an impact with it. And
Yep.
so the first people that knew about this upgrade were core community members and the Avalanche ambassadors. So I created this exploding video. I went really hard in the edits, like it was used AI, used, awesome music or whatever. And it was about a 5-minute video that I spent a lot of time on. And I just showed around 70 people this video once. So there's 70 people in the world that have seen this video. I'll never publish it again. And I essentially just gave them the whole brief. And I said, here's your mission. You need to start seeding this in the community, start telling your group chats. And I also gave them a huge folder of different assets with cryptic clues, a bunch of different different brandings of Avalanche9000. Like you might have noticed there's not really one official logo. Like you see it in a bunch of different ways, bunch of different styles. Sometimes it'll be heavy metal theme. Sometimes it'll be anime theme. Sometimes we'll show it in Japanese. Sometimes we'll throw it in Chinese. Just a bunch of different styles gave them this asset. And without posting anything from our main accounts, without any Avalabs employees talking about this at all, we went trending actually just by telling this one group of 70 people, just say, hey, post this on the timeline, see what happens. And it created this groundswell of what would eventually be a pretty successful campaign. And this is the first time I've ever talked about that too. So that's it's a pretty exciting thing. But yeah, Avalanche9000, it is a cool marketing campaign, but it also is one of the biggest paradigm shifting upgrades, and we can talk into use cases more.
Yeah,
too,
I mean, you guys, you essentially props, man, all props to you. You genuinely nailed the marketing side, because to me it feels really cultural. You nailed the fact people want to be involved. I want to own it. I want to participate in it. That's what sets crypto and Web3 and everything in this space apart from the rest of the world is, hey, I'm actually a part of things that I am consuming here. I'm not just consuming them as a customer. And I think that's big. But honestly, anyone that has ever run anything corporate in the world knows that people don't get stoked about corporate. I want to have fun. And that's the beauty of the space, man, is that it's so fun. And I think you guys leaning into that side, it's the only time that I've seen in the almost 4 years I've worked full-time in crypto where I felt like a major chain was just tapping into pure fun. And so that's a win to me. As far as on the tech side, I would love to get into that. Why is, so your guys' solution is essentially, hey, we want to, and I think this is in reference to one of the videos you posted at one point, we want to tokenize the whole world. We want everything to be tokenized, and we believe that Avalanche is the way to do it. And Avalanche9000 is the vehicle that achieves that. Why is your guys' L1 solution a better solution than L2s on ETH or ZK Tech for scaling or Polygon's AggLayer or Optimism Superchain, any of these other options? Why does the 9000 layer 1 solution solve the problems that these ones are actively trying to solve better?
Yeah. So first off, I want to say there's a bunch of really, really smart things going on in the space, especially with ZK Tech. And I think all of it does kind of have a role in the scaling of this industry. But the reason that things stop making sense on other approaches when you start using the word year in your vocabulary. I think it took me I think actually doing this Avalanche9000 campaign, and we had a new CMO, and when he was talking about this, I think he said the word year in a sentence, and it was the first time I'd heard that word the entire time I've been in crypto. The word year, it's so now and constant and
yeah, it's so short paced, because usually it's here's this thing we're going to do at some point far off in the distance. Most of the things I've been promised in this space still haven't happened, and I've only been here for 4 years.
Yeah. So
you guys announced it and achieved it in 1 year. Less than 1 year. Phenomenal.
But the vision is grander. So if you just want to do some napkin math on where this industry is compared to where the internet is, right?
Okay.
So tokenizing all the value on the internet, right? There currently isn't an accepted standard on how to do that, right? So you have Bitcoin, right? Came out in, almost 15, 16 years ago, something like that. And it was pretty much the first introduction of consistent digital value, right? And that was one of the most biggest things that changed the world and will continue to change the world for years to come. And then you had Ethereum come along, right? And what they introduced is essentially they're still the single chain, but they're multiple tokens on this chain. The concept of smart contracts, the concept of the ERC standards to create digital value, a bunch of different things, right?
Yep.
And that was a huge innovation. So huge props to the Ethereum community. Obviously, it's done pretty well, right? But if you look 5 years in the future, so what will it take to actually digitize all of the value and actually have us be a value layer on the internet? Well, if you just do some napkin math, right? I think the internet processes roughly. Actually, let me look this up. I had this napkin math up. Whatever. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. That's gonna take too much time. But anyways, if you look up like how much data the internet processes, and you look up our fastest chain at the moment with the most demand, assuming it runs its max TPS
all the time, 24/7.
24/7, we're only processing like 0.00000001% of all of the data on the internet.
Insane.
Right? And so it's like if we want to actually compete and even, process 1% of the data that goes across the internet, you need to like do 100 million extra performance essentially on a single chain. And I think a lot of the issue with these other scaling solutions is you kind of make that assumption that the internet isn't going to scale further, but which, as we've learned, if you look at the past, 5 years,
it'll scale.
The amount of data that the internet processes has gone up multiple exponentially amount of times, and it's going to continue to do that. And
so you need an infinite solution.
You need an infinite solution, essentially, right? And most other chains, there's one bottleneck, which is whatever the bottom layer is. Even if you compress, you can compress endlessly and keep adding layers, but unless this thing is extremely performant, it's almost better to redesign the approach. And so that's what Avalanche does, right? So how do we add more bandwidth, or how do we add more block space? You simply add another chain, right? So
you're growing the foundation instead of building on top of it.
Growing the foundation, right? And so let's say if we have 1,000 chains running at the max TPS, right? That might be good for 1% of the internet. But then the next year, 1% of the internet is 8 times that amount. And so then you can just like press a couple buttons and you can 8x the amount of chains pretty easily. So it's just horizontal scaling. It's like, oh, we need more bandwidth. Instead of adding more weight on this bottom chain, you just add more block space. Add more block space. You need more? Let's add new L1. Add more block space. Add more block space. Add more block space. And this confuses people because the current UX in crypto, people imagine of like, well, do I have to like switch wallets like 1,000 times? I have 1,000 different chains on it. That is also the assumption that the wallet UX isn't going to improve as well. And that's also very solvable, right? There's plenty of, so I think if you look at today in the use case, it's like hard to understand the UX of that, but you also have to anticipate that the UX is going to change as well. That you might have a wallet that seamlessly in one place can have assets of 1,000 different chains without it even feeling like it.
Is that, obviously you maybe can't say, is that something that Avalanche is looking at solving yourselves, or do you want like that to be a community solution?
Both. My personal philosophy is that community solutions are always better. Just because it's more decentralized, right? It's more, it's more in the thesis of blockchain.
Well, and the 9,000 proposal is essentially exactly that. It's, if we want to expand, why should we be the ones doing it all the time? Let everyone launch their own L1.
Correct. And again, like I think, for us to succeed, I think, Avalab as an organization, we don't need to get more powerful. We need the community to get more powerful. And if we could have a wallet that could do that for us, that makes the entire ecosystem more powerful. And so like the better A plus Rockstar, Gunzilla, Trader Joe, Go Pool type projects we have, the better the whole ecosystem is going to do. And although it's not as perfectly organized as it is in one organization, it's much more resilient and much more productive, since you don't have to like rely on a chain of command to get things done. It's just the community just goes ahead and does it. So
in the current format, obviously, so like the goal is, hey, somebody solves the UX, the user experience right there and makes it easier. In the current experience, you guys are live now, so we're seeing L1.
Yep.
I know you said Beam just migrated today, I think, to the new
Yep.
experience.
They have, I think,
They're
how many
popping
nodes?
off, man.
Almost like 10,000 different nodes. So
Yeah,
it's
they
like,
just went crazy today.
it's already
So congrats, Beam. Good job.
Yeah.
But on that, so say like
working.
in the next week, I don't know, in the next, it's the end of 2024, maybe in the next month and a half, 10 people on AVAX decide to migrate to that. And now we've got 10 AVAX Layer 1s. Right now's experience is that I'm thinking about like the big complaint with the Ethereum, like the debate with the Ethereum community is like, do we want 1,000 L2s infinitely? Is that too fragmented? Shouldn't we just focus on a few core ones? And your long-term solution is, hey, the community will solve that with better user experiences. But in right now's experience, what does my like wallet experience look like?
Yeah.
Operating Beam versus AVAX versus Gunzilla versus Shrapnels. Like, what is that going to look like right now?
So right now we have a wallet called Core, and by the way, like there's some rockstar Gigabrain teams that we think are going to solve it sooner than you think.
Cool.
Can't announce it yet, but
well, you guys launched 9,000 so freaking fast that I'm prone to trust the sooner than we think statement.
Right, I guess so, right? But I mean, so our current multi-chain wallet is called Core, and it does have unified bridging where essentially so the other component to this is something called interchain messaging, formerly called warp messaging. I like the name warp messaging better, so I'm trying to change it back. But anyways, so the cool thing about this is the validators on Avalanche, not only do they validate the networks, but they also act as the bridge. And so you don't need like a third-party bridge with a bunch of liquidity to do this all sort of stuff. The chain has built-in asset transfers within, and so like that UX experience is also like much more capable and secure
than current bridging experience
than the current bridging experiences as well.
Is it cheaper? I think that's one of the big problems with bridging is how expensive it is.
Yep. It's it's super cheap, and I mean for some chains they can make it free. So
cool.
Yeah, we're definitely building, as I said, we're building for years, not months, which is something that most chains have a hard time doing, which makes sense, right? The incentives, it's such a fast moving space. Sometimes to stay alive, you have to think in months. So I'm not hating on that. I'm just saying that's the approach we're taking. And so yeah, right now it's just Core Wallet. It'll automatically switch between all the Avalanche L1s. Sweet. And like for the Beam one, for an example, I just like hopped in, just clicked a couple buttons. I already had a decent amount of Beam. You could purchase the node in different chains as well. So yeah, it was honestly like this day after, it was a huge use case of like this actually is. It may work. We might pull this shit off. So yeah,
that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah.
I have a question here about sort of bringing value back to Avalanche. I know the last time that we had a conversation, not only with you, but Parker and Coop as well, the question came up as to how do the subnets bring value back to Avalanche? And you mentioned this a little earlier, like, hey, people if they wanted a validator, they had to put up 2,000 Avalanche. That got cut down 99%. All the gas fees got cut down by 90-something%. Where does Avalanche get value from this unlimited amount of L1s that are going to continue to exist or, start to exist?
Fantastic question. So first off, we're prioritizing like product, and so that means that's why the 1.33 is AVAX is that low. But also a difference is that it gets sent to the primary network and burn. So that is a use for Avalanche. And so we saw how many nodes, 10,000 nodes on Beam. 10,000 times 1.33 per month, not a terrible number. And as well, we're doubling down on, what most people are familiar with is the C chain, right? Which is whenever you see stats on Avalanche, it's almost always the C chain, which is the primary network essentially. And that is not going away. And the primary chain is going to be critical for experimentation. Like some people, they may not need their own chain off the bat, but they may need a playground to figure out their ideas and then scale onto their own chain, right? And so we made the gas fees 20% 25 times cheaper on there. And the cool thing about Avalanche is like the tech's so good that all we had to do is just change a line of code. Like we're just like, can the validators handle this? Where we are one of the most decentralized L1s. And we have one of the lowest hardware requirements for it. And so we were wondering, like, can the performance handle like lowering this gas fee? So over the time of this chain, we've continuously lowered that gas fee to kind of see where the sweet spot is, and we haven't found the limit. So fees are a lot cheaper on the C chain right now, which just goes to show we're doubling down on that. And that being our liquidity hub. So if you are a new L1, the question is like, well, you're fragmenting liquidity, right? It's like, well, these people have to bootstrap, get a bunch of, liquidity and users on there. Well, if we have this strong and robust C chain, you can kind of leverage that for your liquidity when you first launch your L1, and with interchain communication, it will just make a ton more sense to like, hey, I can have my own block space without sacrificing, being on this island over here. And so, and it's been proven that the C chain is it's powered in AVAX, it's secured by AVAX, and the stronger the network gets, the stronger the primary network is going to get. And so that is where value accrual will still see the Avalanche network for sure. So we've definitely thought about that, and that is the kind of the crucial mistakes that other multi-chain projects have had, is they haven't had that liquidity hub. Like Cosmos doesn't have that central liquidity hub. Polkadot doesn't really have that central liquidity hub. And if we can have both, then it kind of becomes, the best multi-chain solution we've kind of ever seen.
Cool. AVAX, a better Cosmos. Maybe don't run with that Cosmos. Sorry, guys. I'm curious.
We learned a lot from them, so we love Cosmos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're not shading anybody, except for sometimes I do in my jokes, but it's not meant to be taken literally. I'm wondering specifically with the AVAX token on this point of like capturing value. It's no secret. I don't know where AVAX currently stands as far as numbers, but that basically no layer ones, no blockchains are like profitable. The tokens are all not profitable yet. That's like a vision that every chain wants to achieve. I think ETH achieved it last year. Does the thousands of layer ones help Avalanche achieve that on like making the token not inflationary level? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So AVAX is a cap supply token.
Okay.
And there's no more unlocks as well. Like we're mature enough that there's no more unlocks. And with more L1s, that means that there's more validators burning AVAX, and
then there is AVAX being produced.
Essentially, is the simple answer. So burn more.
Cool. Yeah. So more L1s, AVAX not inflationary is the way that it should work.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. 100%.
Easy, man. I have a question specifically. We're talking about like other L1s. I saw you tweet the other day about Abstract Chain. We had Finn from Abstract on podcast 3 weeks ago or so. Good episode. He was a cool guy. I really like their vision. It's essentially like, let's get everything confusing about crypto out of the way so regular people can interact with it. I mean, that's why their name's Abstract, I assume. You said, which I thought was really interesting, you said, imagine Abstract Chain, but instead of it taking years and $1 million or millions of dollars to build, you could just click a couple buttons to deploy a gasless chain in a few weeks with Pengu as gas, with community validators, and decentralized. That's the Avalanche9000 future. So from my perspective, Avalanche's pitch is essentially, if you're building something monumental, don't spend years building it. Come build it on Avalanche overnight. Does that actually work right now? Does that limit their tech, like Abstract, in any way? What are the reasons why a chain like Abstract would say no to that? And how do you refute those and show them, hey, an L1 in our ecosystem is better than an L1 outside of it?
Yeah. And so, I mean, for them, so I think Pudgy, they were working with ZK Sync for a long time, right? And I'm not going to speculate on like what the deals are behind the scenes, but their L2 is powered with ZK Tech, and which is great chain, great technology. But the trade-offs is that, and even the engineers from Abstract have tweeted this a few times, And we kind of think it is just a perfect Avalanche advertisement. They're like, people think L2s are so easy, but they just went through all the costs of like what it takes to actually like spin up an L2, and it's like millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? And it kind of goes to Abstract's point a little bit, like their whole philosophy, which I 100% agree with. I'm totally aligned with. They just want to make it as easy for the customer as possible. They're going to be gasless, right? Which means that somebody is subsidizing the Ethereum that is going to go down to the bottom layer. Like somebody's paying for that. So the more activity they have, like they're still going to have to be paying for those fees. But the cool thing about Avalanche, if you just want a blockchain with block space, which I think is kind of all they want, like the wallets won't have to have ETH in it unless they fund it for whatever applications they have, which are going to be very interesting. I can't wait to try it out. Like, why not make that gas fee as cheap as possible? If you have your own L1 and you can customize this gas, you can, and you probably have a huge supply of Pengu, let's just say, for an example, in the treasury, you can take that gas meter as low as possible. So you're just essentially just spending dust on each transaction. And if you're sponsoring it for the users, A, that creates Pengu burn, and B, it's going to be a lot cheaper on you, and as well, like the cost it has to create an L1 versus an L2 is significantly cheaper. So it's like $3,000, everything included, to per month. That's including like the RPCs, like the infrastructure, the node to launch an L1 on top of the AVAX that you burn. And so it's just like, I assume they like to save money, and I assume that's pretty much it. I assume they like to save money. And so like that would be the pitch.
Faster.
Yeah. And it wasn't possible. Like, I'm not saying they should have done this, because this tech wasn't out when they were building it a year ago or whatever. But the abstracts in parentheses going forward, unless you're like super ETH aligned and your entire community is ETH maxis, and it would be blasphemous to use any other technology. Like pragmatically, tech wise, if you're just looking at the books, it unless you like losing money, like you would spin up an L1, right? And also I think I'll be 100% honest. I think like Avalanche does have like a bit of a brand problem because we've been corporate for so long, and we're really working on fixing that. And I think if we had had figured that out earlier and not as been corporate earlier, we would have been more in the conversation.
And that's specifically for brands like the fact that Pudgy is so involved with abstract. I mean, if you want to win with culture, you got to engage with culture. And I think that's what you guys are doing now with the 9000 stuff.
100%. So that's a mistake that we're trying to undo, and will help us win, a lot more of these abstract chains in the future. But yeah, I think I'm definitely excited for them, and they're going to crush. It's one of the best teams in crypto for sure. Igloo Inc.
I do want to build on top of that. You mentioned something right now that for the future abstracts in parentheses, for the ones that are going to come out later, for the ones that are looking to create something like that with culture, with ease of tech, bringing it now to a little bit more about the gaming side. We do see a lot of games on the timeline. Games are choosing, places where they want to build, places where they want to go ahead and continue their explorations. In the mold market, it seems like everyone is now seeing huge numbers. Everything's going up. So they're taking the place where they feel like they're going to get the most value out of. Why, for new games coming out, because I feel like we're going to see just countless and countless new games be announced in the next 6 months. Why is the right answer build an L1 on Avalanche? And why should they maybe not look at just a number that they get to go somewhere else, but realize, hey, this might be the play for the long term?
Yeah. So instead of trying to sell a vision, I'm just going to talk about off the grid, right? So this is a game that's been in development for I think like 5 or 6 years at this point. I think in 2018 they started development, right? And somewhere along the journey, like they knew they wanted an in-game marketplace of some sort, and somewhere along the journey they saw blockchain tech as a way to do this. But they still wanted to feel very, very Web 2, because they weren't trying to compete with like crypto games. They're trying to compete with Fortnite. They're trying to compete with Call of Duty. And in the gaming space, you have to think this way, because it's a pretty brutal industry. You have to go big. You absolutely have to go big.
Especially in the shooter space.
Especially in the shooter space.
Don't want to become X-Defiant again.
Yeah, and like, it's a tough spot. So there are options for creating an in-game marketplace pretty much everything that's accepted and has users, let's just go to the Steam store for an example, they'll take 15% of every single transaction sale that you have, right? And you have to go through their tech, and they could decide to turn you off if they wanted to, right? But what if, for not too much money and really no maintenance, and with just a system that you don't have to like force non-fungible ideas into a spreadsheet, which is really difficult and problematic, you could just spin up a blockchain, crank the gas fees as low as possible. You know, when you first log on, have it no easy, like fund these wallets, make earning in-game currency just super easy and seamless. You just had to just like press the most basic smart contract to fund these wallets with. And then if you just really without much involvement, have a peer-to-peer marketplace that just works alive, and it's extremely vibrant with just a couple clicks. Like, you want to own your own blockchain because you want your own token as gas, because that's the incentives are obvious there, right? If you look at the the most in-demand tokens in the entire space, Solana, Ethereum, Avalanche, Sui, soon to be Monad or whatever, they're all L1 tokens, right? L1 tokenomics is proven and it's extremely successful. So if you could just essentially create these guns, these items, these skins
and
as
tie
an
them
NFT
to your own L1 token.
and tie them to your own L1 token, like, it's just like a perfect fit. It's literally a perfect fit, and you've seen that with the stats and off the grid. I mean, you can check, they have like 11 million wallets. Active players are still pretty doing really, really well. And
the game feels better than it's ever felt, by the way. Their new update's amazing. We had Theodore on the podcast a couple days ago.
Oh yeah, he's the man. He's the man. And so and that's kind of only possible on your own L1, and you want to make that as cheap as possible. So if that's your use case, if you want to go big, that's what you want to do. If you just want to, like, if you're in the game of just like fundraising with just some NFT sales without much of a plan, like we've seen over and over throughout this space, you may not choose this approach. But if you want a game that's going to compete with Call of Duty, that's going to compete with all the big dogs, whatever your genre is, it's hard to argue against just owning your own chain and abstracting away from the users. And if need be, you can connect it to all the different marketplaces, such as Gunzilla with OpenSea, and a few others, and have it kind of the ecosystem kind of like spread out, kind of like you've seen with CSGO, without having it to go through a middleman that collects 15% of everything.
On this point specifically, with the why a game would build here, and we're using Off the Grid as the example, I would say they probably had the most successful marketing campaign I've seen of any crypto game before. I mean, I would reference like that Gamer Ninja and the Tim the Tatman were talking about, like, this is crazy. Imagine actually being able to like get this hex out and then I can sell it for something real. And Shroud talking about like correlating it to Magic cards or Pokemon cards or whatever he did. That was super successful. Did Avalanche have a hand in helping them with their marketing campaign? Is that something that you guys throw at games that build an L1 with you guys?
So they were much more independent with a lot of the streamers. But what we are here for, and that we're here for with all of our big games, such as, the Shadowlines, Faraway, Maple Story Universe, is that we'll kind of give you a built-in community that you'll have players day one, right? We've been building out the gaming community for years now. It's not shrinking. We have a bunch of creator relationships, and all of them played Off the Grid. All of them tweeted about Off the Grid. We clipped the hell out of all of that and spread it across all of our different all of our different accounts. And some of the clips, like, were some of my, like, personally, like, my best performing posts I've ever had in my life. Went totally viral. And so yeah, that muscle is only getting stronger. Like, today is the best we've ever been at getting a game out there. And tomorrow we're going to be even better. And then in 3 months, we're going to be even better. The community is going to be even bigger. So Off the Grid, they did a lot of heavy lifting themselves. I'm not going to pretend to take credit for that. But they kind of showed us how to think big and, made that muscle of bootstrapping these games pretty strong.
And I would argue that that's only possible when you do give these teams that have experience, that come in with a vision and a dream, that freedom to go ahead and do it. Where in a lot of other places in this space, that can't happen because there's a lot of rules and things that they have to follow because they're living on another person's sort of ecosystem. When you give them that freedom to build something their own, like their own thing that they actually control, things like this happen. And I will say there needs to be some studying behind how people like the Gonzilla chain is going to be there, the F chain that we're seeing a lot more with Shadowland and everything that Faraway is doing, and also MapleStory, the biggest free to play game that revolutionized gaming for like 20 years now. They're all building on Avalanche, and I think that definitely needs to be studied because right now we're seeing everyone is talking about the new shiny thing, the new game that's coming out, the new chain that's doing this, the new airdrop that's coming out. Everybody is super excited because everything is green. But I will say there needs to be studied that, like, hey, some of the biggest players that are entering the space are building on Avalanche, and that's why I'm super happy to be having these conversations because this is just a start. I know I mentioned in a tweet yesterday, Avalanche9000 is the biggest upgrade yet because there's still so much more to go.
Absolutely. And it's totally exciting. And I think the biggest thing that I don't think people have quite realized, so I'm going to talk about, use Beam as kind of an example. So there's this new concept, a new meta that I think will kind of sprout its head somewhere in the next couple of months. I don't know exactly when, but it's the idea of an initial network offering. And I think the perfect demo that kind of communicates this the best is from a team called GoGoPool. They have something called the L1 marketplace on GoGoPool. And GoGoPool is a liquid staking protocol, and liquid staking, they're in the business of validators, right? They have a bunch of validators under their control and a bunch of relationships. They deeply understand how to create these L1s and spin them up. So the demo kind of goes like, you have this front end, right? You have this website that says create an L1, right? You put in your token, you put in the supply, you add some rules about how you kind of want it to work. You say what virtual machine you want. Do you want it to be the Ethereum virtual machine, the Solana virtual machine, the Move virtual machine? You click that, and then you will hit submit for an initial network offering. And you say kind of how decentralized you want it. How many validators do you want to bootstrap this network? And when you hit submit, a notification goes out to everybody who's participating in this GoGoPool infrastructure. The notification will be on Telegram. So it's a Telegram bot. So imagine that, you're into validators, you're into node sales, right? And you get this notification, right? And it said, hey, Beam has an initial network offering or initial node offering. Each of these nodes cost around $1,250. With your wallet, do you want to buy one of these? And it'll give you sort of the rules. You'll get X amount of rewards over the next couple of months. And if you hit yes on this, such as, we saw with Beam today, on the back end, it automatically spins up physical infrastructure all over the world that will be your literal validator, like your literal node that you will decentralize this network and start earning rewards there. And you can validate as many of these networks as you want. So instead of just like doing sales with like, hey, we're raising some money, we'll like have a smart contract, send this, in parentheses node, but it's not actually like a physical node, some fees. You have physical infrastructure that's participating in the decentralization
legitimate nodes
of this chain, and you will start having rewards. And so imagine in the course of 10 minutes, creating an L1 blockchain and decentralizing it within like a day. And before this, it would take years to do that. It would take years to raise the money, get the tech team, decide how exactly you're going to build this L1 with all these different rules. You'd have to BD your way with some validators. But if you spin up this ecosystem and you just press a button, like you have a community within like a day. And
it's legitimately insane, by the way.
It's legitimately insane.
For anyone who's not wrapping their brains around that, that's legitimately insane.
It's legitimately insane. And so not only is it saying the core thesis of why everybody's here is in crypto, like we love decentralization, we can have that and speed and your own L1. And so instead of like previously, like, Gunzilla was early to this meta, so it took them a little bit to kind of spin this up. Like imagine like a team, let's say, I don't know, Roblox or whatever. There's like, shoot, we need a blockchain. Oh, how do we do that? Oh, okay, let's just click a button, and then just like find out a way to do it'd be hard to like transfer the data over, but like if they just wanted a blockchain, they could do that near immediately, and everyone and their mom would want to be validating that network.
I have a question on that specifically. I think, and this is maybe a little bit one off. We don't have to go into institutions or anything, but I remember, I don't know, a year and a half ago on the podcast, we were a lot deeper in the DeFi side of things. I remember we started seeing like the conversations about about like the US government getting involved with crypto and that whole world. And we saw like when JP Morgan started talking about potentially coming on chain, and Chase started talking about coming on chain. And I was watching my friends in DeFi like debate about which L1 they were going to choose. And it was like almost laughable, because the reality was, why in the world would Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan choose to build on, and this is no shade to any of these guys, on Ethereum or Arbitrum or Optimism or Solana? Why would they choose to go there when they could just build their own and totally own it? And so I don't know, like, is that pitch going to be a whole lot easier for institutions to come in? I saw you guys have already got the DMV and some US government institutions choosing to build layer ones on AVAX. What does that look like? Like, does Jamie Dimon, a guy like that's running JP Morgan or a big bank like that, does he know, hey man, we totally own this if we're doing an AVAX L1 versus doing our own L1 somewhere else?
Yeah. So I think JP Morgan is a great example, because whenever they saw this, they took that exact approach. They said, we're going to build our own. And so that is the Onyx blockchain. And then they learned about Avalanche L1s, or at the time subnets. And the cool thing about that is they can be private. On that L1 launcher I saw, you may not, like, in some jurisdictions, it may be illegal to host financial assets for your country on a public network. It needs to be private. It needs to have rules. It needs to be regulated. And so with that switch of like, hey, make it private, we can own our own network, that's what the DMVs can do. They're going to have a private blockchain. They're going to use our tech, but it's going to be theirs. They're going to own it. It's just going to be a lot easier than trying to spin up their own. And now Onyx, they're kind of seeing the vision a little bit. And I think recently, I don't know the exact details, so I'm not going to make it up, but they recently submitted a patent on the ways that they're going to use L1 technology. So in that patent, that the JP Morgan team, is it the JP Morgan or Citibank? So I forget. Apologize if I'm wrong there, but they literally have a patent for that uses our technology as well. And so the unlock there, and there's a bunch of stuff that AvaCloud, which is our blockchain as a service or blockchain launcher protocol, it's really focused on institutions. We've been acquiring, or I guess AvaCloud has been acquiring some of the best security and privacy software and encryption software companies in the entire blockchain space to integrate it into these Avalanche L1s. And so that any regulation that it might have, any opinions that they want around making sure that their assets are completely under their control, but having the benefits of it being on a blockchain and secure, they can also have that. And so that is a realm that we're also exploring as well, which is kind of like goes back to the thesis of like, your infrastructure needs to be your needs. I wanted our slogan to be "Have it your way," but goddamn Burger King has that apparently.
They stole it already.
Yeah, they already stole "Have it your way."
I'm calling it now. 2028, America's presidential election. The votes will be secured on an Avalanche L1.
Woo!
Could you imagine? I've said for a long time, I think that's something that blockchain could solve, but there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work. And maybe this technology. There's a meme out there, I think, that JD Vance is like a top 5 AVAX holder. So, I mean, you guys are basically in.
Exactly, basically in. I think I know the Cardano boys are running that narrative hard. They're doing everything they got to capture that.
They gotta do something, since the only thing they have is VC mindshare. Caesar, do you have something?
I have another question in the regards of how decentralized these L1s can get. You mentioned this idea of having the website where I can click a couple things, set a couple parameters, and then boom, now I have a network offering. I mean, I think back to like how we saw Pump Fund with the memes and like everybody can make a meme token and boom, you can participate in all the ones that are keep coming up. Now we saw a little bit shift to the AI agents with virtuals and like how anyone can spin up an AI agent. Can we somehow someday see a point where it like, hey, anyone can spin up their own one, have a couple parameters, have these things, and now it's like, hey, anyone can have these things? Or do you want Avalanche to be a little bit more like, hey, let's gatekeep it a little bit more and make it more official?
No, we're going full freedom here. Full freedom here.
Ooh.
We want, you know, we want anybody to be able to launch an L1, and we're not the gatekeepers. It's completely permissionless. There's, you know, and the trade-off there is going to be that we think whenever this season starts and picks up a lot of steam, like, you know, there's going to be people that are just going to see this as a meta and, you know, launch whatever they want. And is it going to be a Gunzilla every time? Definitely not. But like, good. Like, it's not up to us to decide what should have its own L1 and what shouldn't. Like, we're in the business of just having the hammer and nails and giving that to anybody. And like, even on dev, so the tech works on DevNet. And I had this, and people are doing crazy stuff with it. There's this chat GPT type interface that somebody submitted in a hackathon recently where you could launch L1s just by typing in a sentence. And I tweeted yesterday showing a demo of it. And I kind of took a stab at Monad because I couldn't think of any other tickers. But I was, let me pull it up one sec.
Now the AVAX AI narrative is going to take off.
We're trying. We actually have some fun stuff coming in that realm as well. But yeah. So the demo was, so basically, yeah, it says create an L1 with GoGo Pool, and the prompt I literally said launch an L1 called Monad with the token name Monad with the symbol Monad. And this is a 20-second video. And by the end of the video, you can go into like the DevNet, like on the blockchain, and you will see an L1 called Monad with the ticker Monad.
It's crazy that you created something better than Monad called Monad in 20 seconds.
Yeah, that was the joke.
I'm just kidding to the Monad guys.
That was, yeah, I love Monad. The team's awesome, but I just think it's, you know, it's easy to take a stab there because, you know, we spun up their DevNet in 20 seconds. It's taken them years. Come on, guys.
Come on. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's amazing though. I'm excited for that because I saw everything go on like Photon and Pump.fun. Now we saw everything with virtuals and AI agents and everyone else and another change trying to take a stab at that thing. But hey, the fact that we're gonna get to the point where with a couple clicks we can launch our own L1. Now we want to announce the 100x L1 chain is coming soon.
You could. We can do that in this podcast.
I don't know, man. So put that out there yet. I don't know. We'll see. Hey, if you're guaranteeing us a big community for the 100x token, I guess we'll see. I don't know. Don't know that we'll ever enter that business, but I like talking about them.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's a fun space, and I have a gut feeling that the overall narrative, it's shifting back to real, like in quotes real, or utility. It's like we've kind of proven. I mean, people have kind of gone far to the left curve of things with with meme coins. Like it's just like at their base, like what is every token? Every token's a meme coin. So let's just like only launch those. And I'm kind of feeling like this shift that are like people are kind of ready for more of Web3, right? More internet stuff. And I love meme coins and they're going to be around forever. But I do see a kind of an appetite for something a little more tangible.
Memes are fun, but as an investor, I'm way more interested in the things that are actually propelling the world that I live in forward and buying those things early than I am on buying a frog. As cool as the frog is. I did buy those things, but I prefer the more tangible things. Final question, man. We've had you for an hour. We slimmed our podcast down to 30 minutes a long time ago because, especially when we started focusing on games, it's hard to talk for an hour. I feel like I could talk for 3 hours about what you guys are doing with 9,000. I'm excited about it. I think there's a whole world happening there, and I think you guys have done an excellent job. Anyone that listens to me knows that I like Avalanche a lot. This is not investment advice. The question I'm asking you, not asking you where to throw my money, but I'm curious because Avalanche is positioning itself as the everything chain, that you guys have the gaming vertical, and you have the culture vertical, and you have the NFTs vertical, and you have the institutions vertical, the currency vertical, all of it, the DeFi. I first got involved with AVAX with DeFi. With that being said, if I was just finishing this episode and I'm like, you know what? If it's everything, I want to find something cool in all of these spaces. Could you give me something cool that like maybe I should go look at a cool NFT or culture brand, a cool game I should go look at, some cool DeFi thing I should go look at? What are some cool things happening in those verticals that I should check out?
Yeah, this one was launched by a friend of mine about a week ago. It's called D-Launch. And what it is it is a bot where you tag it on Twitter. It's an AI bot where you tag it on Twitter and you said, hey, I want to, create a token with this, that, send X amount of supply to this. It's all like totally public on Twitter. And so it launches, it's like pump.fun, but uses Twitter as the front end with AI, right? And so that works. But the cool twist about this is when it gets to a certain market cap, it spins up an AI agent about that. And so the front end is Twitter, but if you just type out like, hey, I want to launch, a token called Avery with the ticker AVE.
You don't have to jump into pump.fun and figure that out. You literally just engage on Twitter and it does it for you.
You just tweet it. And then if it does well, it'll spin up an AI agent for that tweet and kind of like run a Twitter for you. It's not very L1-y, but that's just like something DGen that's like happened immediately that I think is really cool. And the other thing more on like the L1 side, since I guess we've been talking about that. I'm just gonna say just check out the Beam node sale and check out Faraway. Do your research on Faraway. It's also kind of a paradigm shifting project where it's approaching NFTs, or it's approaching publishing as having NFTs in one game be usable in all of their games. And they're trying to have dozens and dozens of games.
Maybe that's what Jonah's tweet was about with the like 30 NFT collections he tweeted there. And I'm holding some of those, Jonah. Hit me up.
Yeah, exactly. So like imagine like, unlocking a skin in Gunzilla, but then trying out this new game and already having, all your items there. So I think cool. Faraway is doing pretty cool. So D-Launch, if you're to like the DGen stuff, they're developing. It's early stage product, but I think the idea is pretty fun and could create a fun little crazy meta on Twitter. And then Faraway, if you're into gaming, because that's also like something that no one's ever tried before and has been in the Web3 gaming vision forever.
Yeah, everyone's talked about it forever. I've heard a million projects tell me that is a reason, but nobody's actually done it yet.
Exactly.
Cool.
So they're
excited to see him do it. What about if there's don't tell me to buy it because I won't buy it right away. I'm going to go look at it. But what about like culture side, NFT collection? You guys are getting more fun, less corporate. Yep. Is there a cool NFT brand that I should go check out?
My favorite, my PFP, my forever PFP is Steady. It's like,
dude, I was actually looking at them this morning. I think it was the one I was looking at was $800, and I'm trying to decide, is it worth throwing $800 at it right now? There's a cool one on there.
Dude, I love Steady. I'm holding that forever. They have a meme one called Yes, and the dudes are just relentless. They just have so much fun with it. They're just like, they'll like clip fucking The Undertaker doing a fucking choke slam at WrestleMania and just putting Yes over it, and that's like their entire meme. Or like just like any just like dumb shit that makes you say yes. So that's Steady. I say Steady community. I love them.
And you've got just say yes no matter what.
Yes.
In the same world. If that's not 9,000, bro, I don't know what is. Phenomenal. Avery, thank you, man, for sitting down with us. This has been a blast. I'm excited to blast this everywhere, get people excited.
Hell yeah, man.
If they've got maybe someone wants more depth about 9,000, they're enticed by this episode, what's the best resource for them to go deeper?
So I think if you're technical, our docs. That'll be a good one. Docs.avax.network. And Avalanche9000.com will also give you a brief. Yeah, we got Avalanche9000.com. We'll show you what's up.
It's all spun up. Beautiful. Awesome. I will throw those links down here wherever you are listening. Thank you so much, man. This has been the 100X podcast talking about Avalanche 9000. We will see you guys on the moon. That's not financial advice.